For the first time since losing in last week's election, Governor Scott Walker spoke to the media.
Walker held court in his office about an hour ago. Charles Benson was there. He joins us live from Madison with some of what the governor had to say. Charles.
Yeah, the governor reacting to what turned out to be a bitter defeat for him. He knew this was going to be a close election and expected to end up on the winning side of this. He thanked his supporters not only for this election, but for the 3 other times he was voted governor, including that recall. He also talked about his 8 years in office and said that it comes down to really just one word: reform. He talked about the reforms that he has put in place while governor. But here's what he told us a few minutes ago about losing the election.
I'll leave it to the pundits and people who decipher all the numbers, but it was without a doubt a big election, a bigger turnout than ever before. But the numbers we received on a week ago Tuesday would have won the election 4 years ago. They would have won the election 8 years ago. So no way do I see it as a rejection, but rather just a larger electorate than we've ever seen in the past.
The governor saying he's going to finish out his 52 days in office, and a lot of people wondering what's next for the governor. He is close to Vice President Pence and has developed a friendship with President Trump over the Foxconn deal. So I asked him, what's next for Walker?
Tonight and I am going to spend a lot of time talking about that, most importantly praying about that, and figuring out what we think God's calling us to do for the next few years.
Has the president offered you a cabinet position?
Well, right now, as I mentioned, with my mother having just moved her in after my father's passing, both my kids live and work here in the state of Wisconsin, I really don't have much of an interest at this point in going to Washington.
So the governor not looking to move from Wisconsin to Washington just yet. The governor is calling on Senate Republicans and Democrats to finish some business. He wants them to pass a $100 million deal to keep Kimberly-Clark here in Wisconsin and save hundreds of jobs. But Democrats are also worried that in these final days that the Republicans are going to do some things that could potentially limit the powers of the next governor, Tony Evers. Here's what Democrat Senator Larson tells us.
Anything that they do to be able to limit the power of the governor is basically limiting the power of the people of Wisconsin or trying to reverse this election. So I think they'd have a Capitol full of protesters and average people who are upset if they try to move forward on any kind of legislation that limits the power of the governor.
So let's talk about the transition and Governor Walker's legacy. I have Democratic strategist Joe Cepicky with Cepicky Communications and Republican state lawmaker Adam Nealon. And Joe, let me begin with you. I think you had a chance to listen in on the governor's comments. What is your takeaway in terms of how he sees these final 52 days?
You know, I thought he was very gracious towards the governor-elect, magnanimous in defeat, which was one of my keys that I mentioned on election night is how you lose matters. But I also heard a governor who is open to some of what Republican legislators are talking about in terms of monkeying around with the authorities and power of the governor. As you just heard from State Senator Larson, I think that's a dangerous game Republicans are playing, mostly because it's just more politics. We're supposed to be done with that now and get to work for the people of Wisconsin. And instead all we hear are these process and political fights. So I think Republican legislators move forward on that at their own peril.
So Representative Nealon, how do you see Republicans running through the finish line here for the governor in his final days?
Well, I don't think it's playing politics. I think it's protecting the policies that we've put in place over the past 8 years. I mean, when you look at how some of the process has been done over the past 8 years, some of the most important reforms, parts have been done either through the administrative rulemaking process or through executive order. So I think part of it is just going in and making sure we codify different rules that have been put in place already and making sure that they are state law.
And the governor using that word as well, codify. He also points out, Governor Walker, that Governor Doyle did try to put some things through as well during his transition. But Representative Nealon, let me also ask you about legacy here. The governor said at one point in that news conference that he put in so many reforms, he may have reformed himself out of a job. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that is on point. I think part of Governor Walker losing was being a victim of his own success. he's been able to accomplish so much with a Republican legislature over the past 8 years, that part of his message was, let's keep the momentum going. You know, let's finish the job, and not having a substantial amount of things that he proposed out there that he could run on and point to that said, let's get this specific thing done. So in a lot of ways, I do believe Governor Walker was a victim of his own success over the past 8 years.
Joe, when you look on his legacy, clearly Democrats did not appreciate some of those reforms, but is that a fair word to use in terms of what he accomplished?
To me, I view it very differently, but I think the important takeaway is this. So for the last 8 years, they are so proud of these reforms that they've made. Why didn't they get all that work done before the election? The notion of after Election Day, before there is a change in power, after the people of Wisconsin voted for change, call it anything you want, people are going to see that for what it is, which is monkeying around with the will of the people and trying to change the rules of the game because you didn't like the outcome of an election, and we need to get past that.
All right, we'll see what happens here in the next 52 days. Before I send it back to Steve and Shannon, coming up on Live at 5, we'll talk about what is the future of Foxconn. I did ask the governor about that, knowing that that also could be part of his legacy. For now, at the state capitol, Charles Benson, today's TMJ4.
All right, Charles, thank you. To see Governor Walker's full speech, you can go to our website, tmj4.com/thevote.